And thank you guys for turning out at midday today to give me a chance to talk to you at 5 o'clock my time, because normally when you have a session, it's midnight my time.
Well, it's delightful to see both of my great RAF friends whom I met at 128 Piccadilly, the Royal Air Force Club, some years ago. Miss Penelope Broadway, lovely as always. And that young man, Colin Bell, who is our guest speaker today. Flight Lieutenant Bell is a holder of the Royal Air Force's Distinguished Flying Cross and served in World War II as a Mosquito pilot. Born in 1921, Colin, you just celebrated your birthday on 5 March this past month.
Yeah. Well, I'm biologically 75, Mark. Arithmetically, I'm 101. Yeah.
101 years. You're probably old enough for that wine now, I think, then. Very well. Well, Colin joined the Royal Air Force at a very young age, 1940 it was. Flying training was actually conducted here in the States under a plan devised by General Hap Arnold. Colin earned his U.S. wings here in the States, and they must have liked him all right because they made him what we would call a FAPE, first assignment instructor pilot. So they retained him for a while. And Colin, I understand that there were many of you actually that they retained as instructors. Is that not true?
Yeah, but only a few were retained as instructors. And the reason I was retained as an instructor was because of Pearl Harbor. And you've got this big expansion. You've got this big expansion scheme on. And I wasn't given any choice. I was just told that I was now an instructor. And I told my commanding officer to be the blind leading the blind, and he said, I don't care what you think. He said, in the morning, you'll go down on the flight line and you'll have 6 American cadets for whom you're responsible. Good night. And then he threw me out. That's how I became an instructor.
Well, outstanding. And you were an instructor in the Advanced Single Engine course, as I recall.
Yeah.
Well, did you have any difficulty returning to England because of the chaos at the time, or was it simply the instructing that kept you from going home right away?
Well, let's put it this way. Being a cadet in America was a pretty tough assignment. And I can only say that it was probably more tough for American cadets than it was for British cadets. But once I became an instructor, everything, the position was reversed. And due to American efficiency, it ran very, very smoothly. And I must say that I felt I'd had excellent training in America. And I like to think that I gave American cadets the benefit of that expert training. Anyway, I did my best, and here I am today.
Well, very good. Well, Colin did finally escape from the United States and return to the United Kingdom, where he transitioned to the de Havilland Mosquito, and they expected him to actually fly missions, and so he flew 50 over Germany, which I think 13 were over Berlin, mostly at night, as I recall. And after flying those missions, he then transferred to ferry duty, bringing new mosquitoes from Canada to the United Kingdom. So he was Charles Lindbergh several times over, only a few years later. These stop-offs included Goose Bay, Labrador, Bluey West, and Reykjavik before winding up in Scotland. Colin ended his full-time RAF career in 1946 flying out of Blackbush in Camberley, carrying diplomatic mail to embassies in various parts of Europe and Africa. After the war, Colin became a chartered surveyor. And am I right in thinking that you're still involved in that work, Colin?
I became I became a valuer of heavy industry, and I worked for quite a number of years for the government, and then I set up my own practice, and I worked until about 2.5 years ago, Mike, and then I decided I'd worked long enough, and so I packed it all in. But of course, I do a fair amount of lecturing, raising money for charity, and I go all over the United Kingdom, and you never know, one day I may finish up in the States.
Well, we'll see who has the longer working service career, you or Her Majesty, won't we? So you're an active member of the Royal Air Force Dining Club, where I first met you, and you are also a member of the committee of the Aircrew Association at Biggin Hill. You were made a free Mason of the City of London and of the District of Huntingdonshire as recently as 2013. So it's my great pleasure to have everyone listen to my good friend, Colin Bell, recount his activities. And Maureen, whenever you're ready, please begin the video.
Thank you for the introduction, Mike.
But Colin, just behind you, I don't want you to crane your neck too much, but
that's right, I can see it.
There's the Mosquito.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, for me, it's one of the great planes that was ever designed and built. You would presumably concur.
Yes, well, I was in love with the Mosquito from the very first time that I had the privilege of flying it. The Mosquito could fly faster than any German propeller-driven aircraft. And in fact, in the early stages, the Mosquito could fly faster than the Spitfire, although the Spitfires eventually overtook it. Yes, it was a wonderful aircraft, and if you had to fight a war, you couldn't be flying a better aircraft than the Mosquito.
I thoroughly enjoyed the interview with James Holland. James Holland, incidentally, is, I believe, out in the States at this very moment. He's a renowned historian. He's a friend of mine, and he was a great interviewer, and so he set a standard for you, Mike, Bill, and I'm here ready to answer any questions you might like to put to me.
Okay. Before I open it up, I just want to make a comment. If you remember when we first met, one of the members we had on the line there was Colonel Dr. Tom Tredacy, who passed away last a little over a year ago, about a year ago. When he heard that we had a friend of the flight who flew Mosquitoes, he got excited. He actually, I remember him telling me that was a very special airplane to him. He said, and I think you met him in 2020. And he flew B-17s over Germany for the 8th Air Force. And Tom credited the Mosquito pilots with saving many of the 8th Air Force air crews. And he also said, which I find interesting, and I'm going to lead into the first question, he said that was an all wooden airplane, that the airplane was built out of wood, which probably allowed, well, I don't know how de Havilland got that idea, but in order to set the elites of speed records, I'm sure it had something to do with it.
Yeah, well, of course, it was a wooden aeroplane, but by the time that it had gone through all the processes, it was almost as strong as metal. A couple of years ago, I had a flight in a Spitfire, and somebody asked me inevitably, they asked me how the Spitfire compared with the Mosquito. And I said, and I believe this to be true, that there was nothing that the Spitfire could do that the Mosquito couldn't do. They were both very airworthy aircraft. And but the Mosquito, of course, had 2 Spitfire engines. So as far as I was concerned, there was no contest. Given the choice, I'd fly the Mosquito every time.
I've got a question for him, if we can. I'm Gary Walston, Colin, and from a lot of different airplanes, but fighters. And we always have a first defensive move when some other fighter is attacking me. What did they train you on as your first defensive move in an airplane like the Mosquito that probably could outturn anything it was fighting?
I flew the bomber version, so therefore I would have liked to have flown the Mosquito night fighter version. I couldn't think of anything more satisfactory than knocking down German night fighters that were attacking our heavy bombers. But it didn't happen. Well, you have to do in the Air Force what you're told. And I was told that I would be a Pathfinder, a bomber, and not a night fighter. So that's what I did, and that's what I got on with. And it's a pity. I'd have liked to have been a night fighter, but it didn't happen.
There's a question, I think.
Yeah.
Is that John?
Yeah, I'm back again. Yeah.
And we're trying to get the questions here.
Colin, if I may, while we're waiting, did you have a particular defensive reaction that you were trained to execute if you were attacked by a fighter?
No, my defensive reaction was to avoid a German anti-aircraft fire coming into the target, excepting, of course, on the run-up when you had to keep straight and level to allow your bomb aimer to do his stuff. And the other, of course, defensive method was, or benefit, was being up 25,000 feet. And that's 4 miles to you. And we had predicted anti-aircraft fire. So therefore, it took a little while for the shells to reach where you were going to be. It was predicted. And the main thing was not to be around when the shells arrived. So you had to use a degree of judgment. And of course, in that way, you could avoid getting caught by anti-aircraft fire. But as I've already indicated in my reel, it didn't always work. And sometimes, whether you liked it or not, you did get caught. And that was rather a nasty and at times a rather terrifying experience. But there we are. You, as I said earlier on, that's war. You had to get on with it.
Related question, follow up. Did the Mosquito have any cannon or 50 caliber machine guns on it?
When did they install the machine gun or the cannon on the Mosquito? I believe they did later towards the end of the war.
Ah, well, the Mosquito remained a force right up to and for some years after the war, but it was eventually it was taken over by a rather more formidable aircraft known as the Canberra, and the Canberra was pressurized, and of course it was a jet aircraft, whereas the Mosquito was a propeller-driven aircraft. I never had the privilege of flying a Canberra. I wish I had, but by that time I'd left the Air Force and I'd sort of moved over into my civilian occupation. But it was just, I was in love with the Mosquito from the time that I first flew it. I was very privileged and honored to be allocated to a Mosquito squadron. I might have been put on heavy bombers like the Lancasters and the Halifaxes. And had I done so, it's quite possible I wouldn't be talking to you this afternoon.
Yeah. I saw your birthday was at the 101st. You mentioned the birthday was at your 101st birthday was at the Dam Busters bar. What is, can you explain to me what the Dam Busters bar is? That where they skipped the bombs into the dams?
Yeah, they were the Dam Busters were the 617 squadron that carried Barnes Wallace's bouncing bomb, and they were carried under a Lancaster, and very successfully. And Gibson and his fellow pilots, between them, as we all know, destroyed the Moan and the Eder dams. Not so good on the Sorpe, which I think was more made more of earthenware than it was a different form of construction. So they weren't successful on the Sorpe, but they were very good on the Moan and the Eder dams. And as I say, they used the Petwood Hotel, the iconic Petwood Hotel that's not very far away from Royal Air Force Coningsby, as their mess during World War II. And if ever any of you get a chance to visit it, well, I recommend it because it's a wonderful experience to go to the Petwood Hotel and just sit in the Dam Busters bar and recall what those people did. They lost a lot of crews on the attack, but it was a successful operation. And all you can do is to sit in awe and marvel at their bravery in facing tremendous odds and coming out successful in the end. And should any of you come across, well, please let me know and I will join you, because I've got a friend who's got a private plane and he flies me up to Coningsby from time to time. And then we all get into a couple of cars and off we go for a night at the Petwood Hotel. Always a great experience, isn't it, Penny?
It's the most wonderful experience. A little bit difficult to get to from London for those that are flying in from America. Yeah. And RAF Coningsby at the moment is probably slightly busy.
Well, yes, I think I'm rather fortunate in obtaining landing facilities there, but I have done, and they're very helpful to me. But you can understand. I'm sure, Penny, you will agree with everything I've said.
Absolutely. And for those that are not aware, that RAF Coningsby is also the home of our Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, where we have a Lancaster, a Dakota, Spitfires and Hurricanes based, and they take place at the air shows during the summer season. In addition to that, obviously, it's a very active airfield, training and operating Typhoon squadrons.
Yeah, and the Typhoons go and see off the Russian bombers that sometimes encroach into our airspace. That's correct, isn't it, Penny?
Yes, they're air defense aircraft, primarily.
Yeah. But we've got a good relationship with them, haven't we, Penny?
Yes, we do. The station commander is particularly accommodating and enjoys entertaining veterans both at RAF Coningsby and at the Petwood Hotel. But in particular, we have a very close liaison with the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. And those guys are just amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not only do they get to fly the Typhoon from time to time, they're also qualified to fly a Lancaster, a Dakota, a Spitfire, or a Hurricane. They can do all of them. So it's one of the best jobs.
And an 86.
Yes, that's an 86.
Yeah.
Colin, that reminds me, speaking of AT6s, one of our visitors asked via chat where your primary flight training took place in the States. Do I recall correctly that it was in Georgia, or am I mistaken?
Well, I started off in Lakeland, Florida, flying Boeing Stearmans, wonderful little aircraft. I just love the Stearman. I flew one not very long ago when I was over in the States. Well, when I say I flew one, I was a passenger in one. And that was the time I went down to the Confederate Air Force Base. Although I believe they call the Confederate Air Force Base something else now, but no matter. I still think of it as the Confederate Air Force Base. And then I moved up to Macon in Georgia, which was a wonderful, hospitable town. I formed lots of friendships in Macon, Georgia. And then, of course, I moved on to Dothan in Alabama, where I completed my training, got my American wings, and I stayed on there as an instructor for a year or two. Yeah, it's a very happy time.
Colin, the Confederate Air Force these days is known as the Commemorative Air Force now.
That's right, commemorative. I was searching for that word. Thank you for thank you for putting me right. But I still think of it as the Confederate Air Force.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
And Colin, I think you'll remember that you are actually an honorary colonel of the Commemorative Air Force with the Dallas-Fort Worth wing.
And rather like you, you're a fellow colonel too, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah. So I've in my old age, I've acquired a number of honors. I even when I reached the age of 100, I got the usual card from our Queen, for which I was very grateful, and I got a letter from our Prime Minister, and what I wasn't expecting was a letter from your president, President Trump. He seemed to know all about me, which rather shook me. But however, I've got all three, the card, the letter from our Prime Minister, and the letter from your president, all nicely fired away. And I bring them all out and show them to astonished visitors from time to time. Anyway, it's a great honor.
Well, Colin, just so you know, the way words have a way of changing over time for everyone else who's listening as well. Everyone knows the word NOTAM, right? Check the NOTAMs before you go fly. Well, I received an email first thing this morning as I was finishing my coffee, advising that going forward, instead of referring to NOTAMs for standing for notices to airmen, we were now going to go gender neutral and refer to them as notices to air missions. So apparently there are a lot of people with not much else to do but change our language.
Yeah. Perhaps I can tell you one story that might amuse you. Well, when I was out in America, and I, as an instructor, I used to, in the morning, take the 86 up for sort of pre-flight inspection and testing. And I used to go up to about 5,000 feet, and I used to ring the aircraft out. It was a good experience, and I rather loved it. And one day I landed, and an American ground crew fitter said in my hearing, he intended me to hear him, he said, I would like to fly with that little limey lieutenant. So I said, well, if you want to fly with me, I said, come down tomorrow morning and you can have a flight with me. So he said, thank you, Lieutenant. So in the morning, about 8 o'clock, I went down and I collected my AT-6 and he appeared with a lot of his mates, you see. And he climbed into the aircraft and all his mates crowded round and they said to me, give him hell, Lieutenant, give him hell, which I thought was a bit unkind, but however, I took him up and we flew around and I wrung the aircraft out and he came down looking a bit green, but he survived. And there we are. Well, about 2 or 3 days later, I had the same experience. Another airman appeared and said, can I fly with you, Lieutenant? And I said, yes, if you want to. But again, all his mates crowded round and they all shouted to me, give him hell, Lieutenant, give him hell. And I thought something odd going on here. And then, of course, it dawned on me there was gambling involved. The chap who got into the aircraft had taken bets that he could go up with me and come down without being sick. If he came down and without being sick, he kept the bets. But if he was sick, he not only had to clean the aircraft out, but in addition, he had to pay out to all his mates. So that is why all the mates were crowding round on me saying, give him hell. They wanted me to really sort of, well, give him hell and make him sick. And then they would be paid out. Yeah.
Well, Colin, I have a question or two for you, but I thought I should let you know that where I live in the hill country here in Texas, on an airstrip, there's a gent who owns both an AT-6 and a Stearman.
Who is
he? He's a chiropractor, actually.
Is he?
Yes. So I've mentioned you to him a couple of times, and he said, well, if you can get that limey bastard out here to come flying with us, we'll see if we can figure it out.
I like it. I like it. Well,
but he said I'll have to give him hell.
I look forward to that, Mike. I will accept the challenge.
Very well. Very well.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Colin.
Yeah.
You said that in your bombing mission with your Mosquito that you had a navigator, so probably a navigator / bombardier type person. Were all the Mosquitoes two-place aircraft, or was it just for the bomber mission?
It was just me as pilot, plus in this case, I had a Canadian navigator, and he, of course, was also the bombardier. So when we got near the target, he would cease navigating, and he'd go up in the nose of the aircraft and take over the bombing. He'd act as bombardier, and he would give me instructions how to fly over the target, so that we would either drop bombs or, in some cases, just mark the target. We had a number of functions, one of which was to trick the Germans into thinking that we were marking the target, which we go out and mark a place like
Yes,
you with me? Yeah, I say again, we would go out and we would select a spoof target, and the purpose of that was to get the Germans to come, and the German night fighters to come chasing after us, believing that we were marking the real target, whereas in point of fact, the main force were going somewhere else. And when the German night fighters realized that they'd been spoofed, then they had to go back to refuel before they could then set off after the main force. So we were, in effect, we were spoof raiders, and we served a useful purpose doing that. And another thing we did was to go around on what were known as siren tours, and we would go around a number of German cities just to wake them up and force the workers to go down into their bomb shelters, so interrupting production. So yeah, we did a number of what I believe were useful things. Whether how the Germans felt about it, I don't know. I don't think they liked us very much.
Did you have any instrumentation to bomb as something like a Norden bomb site, or how did you bomb?
We had what was known as a Mark 9A bomb site, which allowed for drift, and I'm not sure it was as efficient as the bomb sites that you had in your flying fortresses, but they were pretty good. They were pretty good, and we achieved a degree of accuracy with them. And of course, we could fly to Berlin and back in half the time that it took a flying fortress. So we certainly had that advantage. The last speaker, I'm sorry I didn't catch his name, but the last speaker had a very interesting array of instruments behind him, rather impressive. I don't know where he's got them all from, but I'm impressed.
Colin, that's some of the primitive navigation instruments that I used in my C-130E career as a navigator, and I've purchased those over the years on eBay. So they're actually they're over here next to me in my cabinet, and what you see behind me is actually a picture of all the instruments.
Yeah. Well, when I first flew the Stearman, all I was given was a needle, ball, an airspeed, and altimeter. I wasn't given an airspeed indicator because they told me I got to learn how to fly through the seat of my pants. And I found that a bit daunting, particularly when I went solo. But there we are. It was a wonderful experience. Stood me in very good stead. Yeah, I'm very impressed with all your instruments behind you. And that's also, I imagine, what's the aircraft behind that? Is that a B-29?
No, so that's a C-130 transport aircraft.
It's a transport aircraft, yeah. Yeah. I once had the privilege of meeting out in Dallas, Fort Worth, the second pilot to the colonel that was the first to bomb Tokyo. I'm just trying to think.
Dick Cole. Yeah, Dick Cole. That would have been Dick Cole.
That's right.
Jimmy Doolittle.
Absolutely. And what was the name of his first pilot, Colonel?
Jimmy Doolittle?
That's right, General Doolittle. Yeah, that was an experience, yeah. And Dick Cole got a very sharp mind. He had a great recall. Yes, I had great experiences over there, not least of all meeting Miss Texas.
Colin, I heard you mention getting your American wings. As I recall, you did not receive your RAF wings until just a few years ago. Is that right?
I didn't get my RAF wings bike until about a couple of years ago. And then suddenly somebody, well, I think it was all due to squadron leader Penny. I think that she organized a ceremony for me up at a station up north, and Air Marshal Escher, he called me out at a wings parade, and I was formally given RAF wings. So I had to wait. How long ago? That would have been about 2 years ago. So I'd have been 99 at the time. So I had to wait quite a long time before I got my RAF wings, but I got them eventually. And mind you, it didn't stop me flying in between. I flew all through the war without RAF wings.
Was that common for those of you who trained in the States to wear your Air Corps wings, U.S. Army Air Corps wings, even though you were flying for the RAF?
I wore, I didn't always wear RAF. I didn't always wear American wings, but whenever I go out to America, and particularly if I go out to Dallas Fort Worth, I always make sure that I've got my RAF wings to hand, and then I pin a small version on my jacket, and it always creates a lot of attention. Yeah, it's a great privilege to be entitled to wear American wings, and of course when we have formal functions over here, then of course I wear both RAF and American wings.
Well, that's quite a tribute. We'll need to quote that about what a privilege it is to wear American wings, right? We'll tell that to our young children who are our young people who are becoming pilots now.
Yeah.
And Colin, I want you to know that Penny shared a photo with you with Dick Cole. She sent it to me text, and I have it, but it's not in my slides, and I'm not sure I can get it up. But you'll see it in the next windsock.
I was going to tell Colin that they had a very, very nice tribute to Dick Cole at Randolph Air Force Base that I went to. It was, I think, the year after he passed away, or the year that he passed away. It was very, very nice.
Yeah.
Commemorative Air Force had a C-47 that they flew in for that had been reconditioned.
Yeah. He was an incredibly brave man, and he went out with General Doolittle on a sort of one-way mission. I mean, they never knew whether they would survive or get to neutral territory. I think eventually they got across into China. Is that right, Mike?
That's right. In fact, to underscore what kind of man, well, not only Dick Cole, but what kind of man General Doolittle was, Dick Cole told me that the morning after the raid, Doolittle was sitting on the ground with his face in his hands, and Cole said, "What's wrong, sir?" And Doolittle said, "I'm just disappointed that we had to jump out of a perfectly good airplane."
Yeah. They were the bravest of the brave. It's take a lot of courage to go fly off an aircraft carrier, not knowing where you'd finish up. But Dick Cole told me that they flew across Tokyo and bombed, and when they flew away from Tokyo, they didn't encounter any hostile activity at all. He said they could only assume that the Japanese couldn't believe that there could possibly be enemy aircraft across their territory. So they flew out and they got away without a single shot being fired at them. But of course, the Japanese woke up to it, and then they started pursuing them. And I believe they did capture some crews that went out there, and they didn't do so well. Yeah,
They did.
Colin, I want to really thank you, and the flight thanks you, the Dedalians thank you. We're going to make a toast here to you. And the thought went through my mind, you know, many of us participated in combat, but your generation, and I think I mentioned this once before, the greatest generation, we appreciate that here, but when the battle's in your backyard, I think it takes even a little extra gump to do what you had to do. But you did it, and it worked out well for everybody, for the world. So we all are indebted to you and people like you, Colin. So we hope we can continue this association, and we want to make a toast to you and your life and all you've given to all of us. So to Colin Bell. To Colin.
Here.
well, thank you, gentlemen. I'm honored by your toast. It's been a privilege to be talking with you this afternoon. I've enjoyed it immensely. And I think when you mentioned the bravery of my generation, I commented that the bravest of the brave were those people in the 8th Air Force who flew flying fortresses in the early stages of the war. And when they were expected to fly 25 missions, and the majority of them didn't survive more than 8, but they get on with it. And they flew, they were true patriots, and all honor to them. They were the bravest of the brave, and I suggest we all raise our glasses to them.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
Here.
Thank you very much for having me on your program. It's a great honor, and it's also an honor to wear this super blazer, the Dedalian blazer that you very kindly sent over to me. And may I say, it fits me perfectly.
Colin, I'd like to add we're grateful for your service, and we're proud that you were trained in the United States, and we're also proud that you're wearing that green jacket.
Yeah. God bless you all. God bless America. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.